to anybody else, if somebody asks you the question, tell me about yourself, who goes blank? Okay, so 2 people go blank. Who gets that? Yeah. And it's because of this wonderful collection of all of our experiences. At this stage of life, I'm everything I've done before. So on a simple level, if somebody says, what are you doing now? I was a longtime corporate leader, turned leadership coach. It was a natural progression for me on the surface. But there was so much underneath there. I'm a mother. I'm a wife. I'm a daughter, an elder caregiver. I'm a dog mom. I have 2 boys who are amazing. And they're all part of my story. And they make me who I am today. And all of that has come together to make me want to help other people, not just tell their stories, but tell the stories that they want to tell. And so when you think about the title of this talk, Turning Transitions into Triumphs, it really is about learning to tell that story that you. So everybody sitting in here, you're at a point in time. And anybody like math? Okay. All right. I'm going to avoid those analogies then. But if you can think of your life as a path, I'm not going to say it right. I've already been cautioned to not math talk people. You got to understand, I grew up with 2 mathematicians at home. Everything was math. Like it was all logic, analysis, making lists, schedules, and it wasn't dry. It was just the way that we thought. So anyway, if you think about the path of your life, you go through a lot of times when there's a potential transition point. And how you choose to move forward is going to determine what happens to you for a really long time. So just a little bit about Vantage Shift. When I wanted to go off and start a coaching practice, okay, this is going to sound really silly, but the thing that took me the longest time is coming up with the name. And I literally spent 3 weeks just thinking about what I wanted to call my practice. How I landed on Vantage Shift is that when you work with a coach, if the coaching engagement is working for you and it's the right relationship, you actually go through a shift. And coaching also, in order to get to that shift, helps you reach a vantage point. You sort of feel like you're on top of a mountain and you're looking out and you see everything that's going on in your life and you just get a better perspective on it. So Vantage Shift is really about helping people plan for changes that they want to make, cope with change that's happened, and grow as leaders. Maybe some of you who have your own business are reaching that transition point where your staff is growing, your business is growing, and you can't keep having your fingers in every single pie. Yeah. Smiling. There you go. Okay. And if you guys ever want to read anything more about me, if you go to my website, so there's articles about me and Vantage Shift. I do have a certification from Project Management Institute as a project manager professional. I'm a certified professional coach from University of Miami. I am a member of the International Coaching Federation, and I'm right for meeting. Okay, so let's get into how you recognize that you're at a transition point. Does it surprise anyone in here that you may not actually recognize that you're there? Anybody think that's a little strange? What do you mean? Well, yeah. Let's take a look at this lady. She's standing on a road, and she can go seemingly a couple of different directions. There's also other directions she can go. She can just keep going straight, go onto the grass. She can go right, left. She can turn around and go back. There are lots of different possibilities. And how she recognizes that she's there, or how you might recognize that you're there, is, okay, we're going to talk a little bit more about my favorite topic, which is core values, because I think honestly it is at the root of everything we do, how we relate to other people, how we look at ourselves and our world. But often oftentimes what happens is there's a little bit of misalignment there. And maybe you feel a bit restless. Maybe you feel like, it's potentially I haven't met yet. Or maybe, and this is, again, I'm really trying hard not to do the math talk. But for anybody who remembers, if you look at a graph and it curves, there are points where the curve changes, right? And the mathematical term for that is an inflection point. And the interesting thing about inflection points is whether you're looking at this from a geometry standpoint or an algebra standpoint, it could either be a point where a change has already occurred, or it could be a point where you can make a change happen. And if you just kind of close your eyes and think about all the times in your life you transitioned, and maybe it was something that you felt was normal, like leaving your parents' house or going off to college. But there are some things that are not so normal. Like, not everybody starts their own business, right? But what did you feel when you did that? When I started 20 years ago, I had plans. Can I? Can I not? Can I? Mm-hmm. Like my own kids tell me, my son, I was 9 years pregnant when I started. It's so he's 20 years old today. They're like, Mom, long ways. You built such a beautiful office with employees. I didn't think I was scared, but yeah, it's very important to take that leap and go. It's the little baby steps I feel like can take you to a path and the heights that I feel like I'm all that, or I've accomplished a lot of outside of things that you were like, oh, you're actually a very successful person where you have been in this industry for so long, starting from a little call from the home to a big office now with employees. And actually, I don't feel like, or I just don't have that attitude or whatnot. From other perspectives, I'm like, wow, you've come a long way. I'm like, oh, I think, yeah, I used to work for companies and I was like scared to leave that path and start my own business. Yep. There's the fear, right? And there's also sometimes a little bit of like needing someone else to give you a nudge. So when I was at my transition point, what I like to call my inflection point, sorry, man. I was a corporate leader, and I just felt like the thing I loved doing was helping my people develop and grow. And the weird thing was, I didn't actually, it's not so much that I didn't care about the business. Of course I did. And I wanted the business to be successful. But I wanted my folks to be successful in it. And I wanted the company to be successful because the people were successful. And it was interesting because sometimes it takes someone outside to tell you, maybe that's something you should explore. Like I had a coach say, coaching, and that's what kind of set me off on that journey. So, change. When I said that word before, it was really interesting because everybody had like such visceral reactions to that word. And change is really about possibilities. What's fascinating is that there's a Bureau of Labor Statistics number that says from the ages of 18 to 54, average person will hold over a dozen different jobs. I've come pretty close. Anybody else? Yeah. So change is pretty much a constant thing with us, but it really is about the possibilities too. And that's what's important for us to keep in mind. So in order to illustrate this a little bit better for you, I picked a few success stories that I call transition success stories or success stories of clients that I worked with who actually went through their transition point and turned it into their triumph. So these names have been changed, and I always choose B because of the internship. So let's take a look at Victoria. She's a small business CEO. Actually, that's her. Her paradigm is being a doer. She's the one who's got her who's got her finger in every pie, knows all the stuff that's going on. And the transition point for her came when her business and her staff grew to the point where one person just can't have all those people reporting directly to them. And even when she put in layers and tried to promote people and turn them into team leads or managers, she recognized that she was spending way too much time in the details. So, what did we do? This was really about a mindset shift. And honestly, if I could describe coaching in a couple of words, that's it. She really needed to shift from that doer paradigm to being a leader. And what's fascinating is when I say the word leader, people get all kinds of ideas in their heads. And I'll tell you what I mean by it. Leader means truly setting direction, being the one to have to embrace strategic thinking, being the one to be open to the possibilities of, maybe we need to do something a little different. And so she has successfully transitioned into this leader paradigm. Let's take a look at Victor. When Victor came to me, he had a really interesting situation. I spent a long time in tech, so I'm used to working around engineers, and it's kind of my thing. I was a project and program manager in engineering for a very, very long time. And Victor was the go-to person. He was the one that everybody grabbed. He's the subject matter expert, and if they had a big meeting coming up, they needed to convince a customer to buy or convince a customer to stay with them or to use a new feature, they would grab Victor. So it was interesting because he was at that transition point. And how it showed up for him was the company was going through a reorg, and he started having those feelings of, there's something else out there for me. Am I doing what I really want to do? Is there something that could propel me into the future that I think is possible that I haven't actually imagined yet? And so we worked together on strategic planning and communication. And this doesn't sound complicated, but it was really interesting. This is a very interesting case because I was working with somebody who's an individual contributor and wasn't naturally seeing himself in that role of being the one who needed to embrace the strategic thinking. He was the go-to guy. It's like, here, Victor, go over here. Okay, come over here. Victor, go over here. Talk to this guy. Okay. And that's how he spent his whole day. So he really needed to change. And what was fascinating is when we started talking about what he really wanted, it became so clear what he needed to do. It was, I'm not going to say it was easy, but the path was illuminated. And he, using some really key skills that you don't normally associate with engineering, positioning, he's a marketing person, marketing people. Yeah, positioning is actually really important for everybody. How do you position yourself in your organization or yourself to your customers? Also, everybody talks about communication, but when I use that word, I also have a communication degree. When I use that word, I mean something really precise in terms of communicating in ways that get people to act the way you want them to. So he needed to learn how to build allies, get them talking for him, and put together a plan that when executive management was presented with it, went, oh, yeah, company actually really needs that, and you're the right person. And so his triumph was getting into this identical. And one more, and then we'll talk a little bit about what your journey might be. So Valerie was a new manager. She had just gotten promoted, and usually a lot of people just kind of stop there. I got my promotion. I'm done. I don't know. Who thinks that's true? Okay. Happy. But what then? How do you succeed? Are there skills that you need to rely on that you didn't rely on before? I'm actually not a fan of people having to completely learn new things or improve things that they don't do well. I'm a huge fan of identifying skills that somebody can really use and lean on going forward. And so working with Valerie, that's what we did. Her team it was new, there was no structure, she had to put in processes in place, and she also needed to gain the trust of all of her team members. So the promotion wasn't it. That was just the beginning. And so her triumph was really stepping confidently into leadership. And that was all about flexing her style. She had a very distinctive style as an individual contributor in how she showed up at work. There was nothing wrong with it, but what she needed to identify were the key points of that style that would really resonate with her team, with her colleagues, and with executive management. Again, that word communication. You think I don't know, it's almost like I think nobody knows how to talk. That's not what I mean. It was learning how to communicate so that she advocated for her team, advocated for herself, helped people understand her team's place in the organization and why they were important and what wouldn't happen if they weren't there. And then cross-functional collaboration. Everybody has probably put that on their resume at one point or another. But there's a difference between I worked on a project with the folks in sales, or I pull teams together, I decide what really needs to be done, I get them all going in a certain direction and towards a specific goal. And so her triumph was really stepping confidently into leadership. If anybody has any questions, by the way, please stop me or anything else you want to know. Okay, so what about your journey? Well, let's talk about finding your desired direction. As a coach, I always start with core values. I mean, core values are at the root of how you show up, who you are, how you see your world, how you see yourself in your world. So it's really important that you understand that. And what's fascinating is there's a really nice mix of people. And I can guarantee you that for those who've been in biz for a while, you've probably had a few changes in what those values are. Maybe not entirely the list, but the priority and what's really important to you. And maybe as you do things like get married or have children, like your values can actually shift. I know mine have. And there are things that are important to me today that weren't important 20 years ago. And so for everybody in the room, that's something that is really good to kind of refresh over time. I love to talk. Everybody always kind of giggles when I work on this with clients, but I feel like we all have this community in our head. So we've got people who've like taught you life lessons. You've got beliefs that you hold about work. I don't know. Did anybody else learn at some point, unfortunately, that work had to be really serious? Yeah. Why? But that's just a lesson that I learned. And there are voices in our head all the time. You got people yapping at you. And the loudest voices are what another coach calls inner critic and inner mentor. I don't know if anybody's ever read Tara Moore's Playing Big. It's an amazing book. But you've got someone in your head who's talking about the things that are possible for you and what they want you to do and what you can do. And then you've got another one who's sort of holding you back. And it's not holding you back in terms of thinking you're not talented, but it's more holding you back. Your inner critic wants you to stay safe. My inner critic didn't want me to stand here in front of you. My inner critic told me that I was going to flop. And the funny thing is, you have to learn how to deal with those voices, right? And so that's part of like it can happen during a coaching journey. Because certainly, through working with a coach, I've learned to tell my inner critic, it's okay, I'm safe. Nobody's going to attack me. It's all right. We're going to be fine. And then life. Life happens. There might be stuff you really want to do, but you just can't. I'm at a stage of life where my kids are older, so they don't need me at home as much, but I'm an older. And I do have a parent who is gradually needing more and more of my help. So there's stuff that happens. And you can take all of these things into consideration to really find your desired direction. How do you make it happen? Visualize success. So let's talk about what happens to get you there. So first of all, I like to call this discovery because once you do that groundwork of looking at your values and the chatter that's going on in your head and what you need to consider for your life, then you can actually start looking at the possibilities. Remember that slide, change is possibilities, right? And so that's the time to start thinking about all of that stuff maybe that you wanted to do when you were 5. Maybe you still want to you started a business just like you wanted to, right? You became a businesswoman after selling lemonade. Like there's actually a lot of connections there that will help you figure out, okay, I think this is kind of the list that I want to go after. The other thing that I think is really important, so at the risk of sounding sexist, I think women are awfully hard on themselves. And I encourage my clients, I don't coach just women, obviously, but I encourage my clients to really do an honest, open minded skills inventory. What do you do well? Let's focus on that. What are the things you really like to do? What have you learned? What experiences have you had? There are some things that are possible as a next step. Like, it's possible if you have an engineering degree to potentially go and, with a little bit of retraining, go and teach math. However, it's not possible for me at my age to just go straight into being a dancer, right? That may or may not be possible. It would take a ton of training. And so, really kind of being honest about that skills inventory and then looking at the preparation you need. LinkedIn has an interesting statistic that career changers, I'm trying to remember the exact number, it was something like 40% go and get further their education or get another certification when they want to change careers. But you know what that means? 60% don't. And my experience, and this is completely anecdotal evidence, I don't have any research to back this up, but my anecdotal evidence tells me that women often jump to, I need that degree, I need that cert, I need something to throw on my slide that says, all the press that I do in my certification. So it's kind of interesting that we as women will gravitate to that. And so it's something for you to keep in mind as far as go and have informational domains research that actually talk to people about whether or not do you really need another degree? Do you really need a certification? Can you just go? And then the most important point is knowing your stories. So not just the stories that you tell about what got you to where you are today, but also, where am I going after? And that is the fun part. Knowing what story you want to tell. So a little bit about how am I doing on time? Okay. So a little bit about some people who could potentially. Everybody needs support at one point or another, especially if you're making a transition. So hopefully, I really fervently wish this for all of you, that you have one or more of these helpers in your life. Maybe you have a mentor, somebody who can help you gain job skills or talk to you about their experience, or maybe kind of head off you going in the wrong direction because they tried that and it just didn't work. Sponsors are kind of interesting. Has anyone actually experienced sponsorship? Yeah, it's beautiful, isn't it? And the difference between a mentor and a sponsor is a sponsor talks you up, pulls you with them, convinces other people to open doors for you. Huge difference. And so if you have anybody in your life with that kind of those connections, that kind of power, very helpful. The other thing to remember, and I'm sure Nobody in this room has ever done this, but your peers are really important. You never know which of them has some really helpful advice, helpful connections. Which of them might be your new boss? Maybe you'll be their new boss. So really important to build those soft relationships. And then there's another category that I call sort of journey partners. And this is where I would put myself as a coach. And these are people who are not vested in your outcome. And this is a weird thing to say about coaching. Did you guys know this? As a coach, I am not supposed to, from ICF trained, I'm not supposed to tell you what to do. I am not supposed to push you either openly or through my questions in any different direction. What my job is to surface your inner wisdom. And these partners can really help you figure out what you want. Turning off all those voices in your head and the, thinking about all the experiences that you've had. How do you focus on something that just feels right? Okay, so I love to always have a little few kind of tips and tricks. First of all, if you want help, ask with confidence. How many of you have been really delighted when someone asks you for proof? It's fun. How did it make you feel? Yeah, yeah. It makes people feel important. It makes them feel like their experience and their opinions matter. So ask. The other side of this coin, though, is politely accept the no's. Not everybody is going to want to say yes if you ask for help, and that's okay. And those are the people that you can quickly kind of ghost, but sort of put them aside for now because for whatever reason, I don't know, maybe they feel threatened by you getting the chance to go do what you want to do, or maybe they don't really feel equipped to help and they just don't know how to tell you, and that's all right. Lean on your network. Okay, this is really interesting because I read a book about this, written by a coach, as a matter of fact, that your weak ties, who's heard of this term? Your weak ties are the most helpful. They are not friends and family and the closest to you. They are acquaintances. They're sort of your second level connection. Those are the people who 68% of the time are going to assist you making the change. Something to keep in mind. All right, so what's coach do here? Well, we talked a little bit about what I do at Vantage. And a coach can help you through this process, planning, coping with change, growing as a leader. It's really interesting because a lot of people have never done the work of embracing their own style and figuring out how to really make it work for them. Really thinking strategically. They're so busy thinking about what has to be done today or the to-do list for the week. And learning how to communicate with people as a leader. That sounds very different than just talking to people. And then being an agile learner as a leader is really important for you to do it. All right, so thank you very much for listening today.